Good afternoon, everyone. So we're here to talk about how Reddit scaled the Reddit videos to 1 billion views. My name is Anand, and this is Josh Street, my colleague. To kick it off, a little bit about me. So I grew up in India, came to US for my master's at Purdue University, and then spent about 8 years at Microsoft working on their data compilers, big data, connectors, and most notably, I spent 3 years working on their Power BI tool as an engineering manager, scaling it up from 0 to 5 million subscribers. And here at Reddit, I'm currently running their machine learning and AI platform teams called Knowledge. Before this, I worked on the Reddit video platform, as well as the Reddit redesign. Here's what we're going to cover today. Give a quick overview about Reddit, talk about why and how we did the redesign, and then jump into video and go into the technical architecture for the video. So quick poll, how many of you guys use Reddit regularly here? Nice, nice. So for folks who don't use Reddit often, I just want to give a really quick overview. So Reddit is a platform of communities where you can find people that are as passionate as you are in your interests or hobbies. So it could be sneakers, it could be sports or movie fans, whatever, right? And with Reddit, you get really authentic conversations. Even for folks who know what Reddit is, they don't know how big Reddit is. So Alexa ranks websites based on their engagement and time spent. Reddit is at number 5th in the US and 14th globally. And we have about 330 million monthly active users with close to 140,000 active communities, 12 million posts per month, 96 million comments per month, and 2 billion votes per month. At the core, Reddit is bringing belonging to everyone in the world. Here is how Reddit works overview. The first one, it's pseudonymous. As you guys know, we don't need real identity to use Reddit, which brings in really authentic conversations. The second one, at the core of Reddit, it's all about communities. And we have communities for videos, we have communities for sports, and if you participate in the communities, you just have to follow their rules. And we also have upvoting and downvoting similar to other platforms. And finally, even if you're new to Reddit and you don't subscribe to any of those things, we have this thing called the front page or our popular, which gives you what is currently happening across all the subreddits and voted by the top. So why did we choose to do redesign? I just want to walk through a few things. So this is Reddit in 2006. It was built on prototype.js by the original founders. And 2008, we moved over to use jQuery, and the site almost looked similar. And a few things happened, like the founders sold the company, left and found Hipmunk. And then fast forward to close to 9 more years, and Reddit pretty much didn't change. It was almost similar. So it was time that we needed to change it. So why did we choose to do the Reddit redesign? There were 3 main reasons. One was brand perceptions. And the second one was to make it welcoming for new users. With Reddit being the community, and we want to make it easier for anyone to access the content there. And then, of course, increase our developer velocity. It's like age-old code base. It was really hard to maintain, really hard to hire. So there was quite a few things. So when we wanted to start going with our mission, building for new users and make Reddit welcoming, we started doing it on the mobile apps. So we released our first mobile app in 2016, and we've been building a lot of native features in it, and it's been getting a lot of usage. Reddit being Reddit, our users did notice a subtle difference between our mobile app and then the desktop side. On the right, you can see Brad Pitt. On the left, you can see Michael Cera. It was like a drastic difference, right? And it was, if you guys know about Dig, there used to be a company, and there's a reason why the redesign for Reddit is really, really hard. So Dig tried a redesign a decade back, and then they kind of launched it, and the biggest problem was the way they changed the algorithm on the voting page or the front page was providing promoted content a lot more, and a lot of people left Dig and moved to Reddit. So it was critical that once we redesigned Reddit, it was something that what like our current user base loves, and we can make it also welcoming for new users. So how did we do it? Obviously, first build a team. So we started building the redesign in December 2016 when the overall company was 150 people with 70 engineering team. There's literally 2 people on their front-end team who started working on the redesign. And so we had to rapidly build our design team, which scaled up from like 2 designers to like 10 designers, and also scale up a product team. And that's when they hired me, and then we built like a nice, diverse team which built the redesign. So thanks to the team. And the second one, the way we did the redesign was like when we were building the redesign, there is a reason why our users still come and use Reddit, because of the fact it was still, they were comfortable. So when we were doing the redesign, we tried to make sure we gave them the familiarity. So Reddit users, they can customize, the moderators can customize the site as much as they want. So we provide a lot of structures tooling around it. And finally, we did a ton of user testing, and we roll it out through multiple phases over months. So we first started with like a really small alpha with just like 10 to 15 users, got a ton of feedback, and then addressed them, and then opened it up and let new communities come in. So it took us almost like 6 months to get in a ton of feedback, address all of them. So, so during this, the course of like giving feedback, one of the primary reasons, or one of the issues where we had a few issues, we fixed a lot of them. One of the issues was the performance was not good. And Reddit being Reddit, there came up conspiracy theories on the site. So this is a post on our redesign community, which talks about how once you are routed into redesign, the old site is going to be slow. And so people are coming up with interesting theories on how to do it. And it was really hard and very fun to work with Reddit, like all the feedback that they were giving. And the conspiracy continued. Like, say this was a funny post which said there were 3 ads in 8 posts. And at Reddit, we also tried to have fun, and this was one of our product manager, which he came and said it was actually a bug. We would try to make it everything as a post. So it's a really good community, very passionate people, and it was really fun building this redesign. So the TLDR was like, listen to your users. Like the way we were able to push this redesign was launch it to a small set of user base, get them to become your advocates. So it was really interesting. When we first let in 100 users, they were like, okay, this sucks, this is really bad. Then we addressed their feedback, and then we let the next 500 users. It was really interesting to see the original 100 people started defending for us. So listen to your users, and addressing their feedback was really helpful. So this was an example of one of our moderators who saw people who started coming into the redesign. They saw like some issues and started reporting stuff. So this guy went and built a wiki page documenting all the known issues, the things that are in progress. And it was really powerful to see the community coming together to help us ship the redesign. And finally, most important for us, after listening to the users, is like measure everything. We take monitoring very seriously. So this is a graph that we built, a real-time graph which shows Reddit users coming into the site. So that's why and how and we did like the redesign. So now going into the fun technical part. So so before that, so this is what the old redesign looks like, and this is kind of what the redesign is like. What we tried to do was like the familiarity and providing better experiences and also options. So with the new redesign, we gave them 3 options. One is the classic view, which is almost similar to the old redesign. And some of our Reddit users really hate white space. So we gave them an option where you can compact, like everything is compact. There's no white space. The whole screen is filled up with the content. And then we also have a card view, which is more welcoming for the new users. So that's all about the redesign. So let's start talking about video. So for Reddit, we have a lot of different content types. Images, video, self-post, which is text post, link post. And video is one of our most popular content type. And I just want to show a couple of examples on what kind of videos and GIFs are in Reddit. Tell me if you don't like it. That is a cat fist bumping a human, and it got about like almost a million upvotes. Like ton of upvotes and close to a million views. And the next one. So this is actually a cat walking a human, and clearly a world where the cats are in charge. And this again got like 100,000 upvotes, close to 500,000 views. A lot of Reddit is cat pictures. We will agree. So it was really important for us to build a native experience for communities to express themselves. So why did we decide to build video? Native support. The second one is the communities can express it. And our opportunity for the mobile was really, really high. As we started building the native app redesign, the desktop redesign, we wanted to revamp all our experiences. And the most obvious fact is like people in general love media and interacting with media. And this kind of highlights the Reddit video problem. Like the way, before we built the native platform, the way Reddit video works was you had to go to a third-party website, Giphy, Imager, go upload your video, and wait till it processes, get a link, come back to Reddit, find a subreddit, and then once you post it, and you sit and pray, hopefully it doesn't get removed by our auto moderators or our community rules. So it was really, really cumbersome, and we wanted to make this experience much better. And of course, we had a bunch of playback issues around how we treated third-party content. So we wanted to give a unified experience, so we tried to do that. So with that, I want to ask my colleague, Jaspreet, to come and talk about our video requirements and what our Reddit video pipeline looks like.
All right, everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Jaspreet. I'm a senior engineering manager at Reddit, and I was part of the team that developed the video pipeline at Reddit. So let's talk about some of the requirements that we had at first. One of the things that was kind of new for Reddit was as soon as you submit your post, we made it live. So one of the challenges that we first had to face when developing this was dealing with an asynchronous processing so that we could actually transcode the video. And what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to have a penalty for users while that video was transcoding, while it was getting on the hot queue. So essentially what we had to do is make sure that we didn't bring that post live, wait for the transcoding to complete, and then index that so that other people can begin to interact with that post and see the content. The other thing that we wanted to make sure that we did was we wanted to make sure that we didn't break the moderator experience. This needed to integrate seamlessly into AutoMod. By a show of hands, how many people know about moderators at Reddit? Great, yeah. So basically we wanted to make sure that we were able to integrate with all of that tooling and make sure that posts could get removed, et cetera. And this was part of the requirements that we went into it. Now, part of this asynchronous flow, we also wanted to make sure that we notified the user once the post was live, since it was an asynchronous process. And lastly, because Reddit, we value privacy, wanted to make sure that we stripped any geotagging data, and this is really important. The last thing we wanted to do is give away location data to other users, right? So we wanted to keep these things in the forefront of our mind as we went through this process. So the other thing that we wanted to do is we needed to support MP4 so a user could upload that MP4 and we could play back that video. But we also wanted to give users the ability to go and upload an MP4, and for us, we call it gififying this video, which was we strip it down to less than a minute, we make sure that we loop this, loop the video, and gave them that experience of having a GIF, but delivering it via an MP4 so that, obviously it's optimized, et cetera. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that this worked cross-platform. So iOS, Android, desktop, mobile web. And we wanted to support adaptive streaming. So we wanted to leverage HLS and Dash to make sure that users could see the actual GIF or the video, even in low connection environments, and we didn't want to have them download the entire content before playback started. So probably the most interesting set of requirements were the infrastructure requirements that we had. We needed to scale to about 10,000 uploads a day, and we needed to deal with elastic demand. So the thing is that with Reddit, 5 to 8 a.m., 8 a.m. for the East Coast, we have a ton of users start coming in and start posting videos. So we needed to make sure that we were robust to this kind of elastic demand, or whether there's a sporting event or things of that nature where we just get a ton of people coming into Reddit, and we had to make sure that we didn't break in those moments because that's where some of the most interesting content comes from. The other thing is that we wanted to make sure that we had a quick turnaround for the processing in this transcoding pipeline. The last thing you want to do is be waiting for your video to come back and have that experience where you have to come back half an hour later. And probably the most important thing is the team that actually went into developing this. I was managing 2 separate teams, so it was about half my time and 1 other engineer, and we had a couple of vendors help us out with the native integration as well. But realistically, we needed an infrastructure that was minimal, that had a minimal touch on our current infrastructure that we had. We didn't have really the resources. I think at the time there was about 30 to 40 Reddit engineers at total, and so we didn't want to add this burden to our infrastructure team, and we wanted to be able to leverage as many managed services as possible. So that we could have very, very little touch and have that confidence that we could deal with the scale that Reddit has. So let's talk about the Reddit video pipeline. And real quick before we do that, this was actually Reddit's first viral video. So this is the first thing that made it to the top of the homepage. And it kind of shows to the community expression that Anand talked about beforehand. And here's an opportunity for them to express themselves in yet another medium. It's a simple video, but it kind of shows the power of Reddit and what communities do at Reddit. So before we dive into the video pipeline, we want to look at Reddit's infrastructure right now. So this is a very high-level view of what Reddit's infrastructure looks like. And the interesting part here is the monolith that we have in R2 here, and that's what we call it internally. And so essentially, as you can see, we're starting to break things up into various microservices. We have our front end, which is the redesign now, and we have an API layer. And slowly, we're beginning to peel back the layers here and move these into microservices. But for now, that's what it looks like. And so more specifically, if we do a deep dive into this infrastructure, you can notice we have the same code that's deployed across multiple app pools. This is how we deal with scrapers or crawlers or things like that. We'll send them to various app pools to make sure that users that are coming for the content, et cetera, have the best experience possible. And I think for this talk, the interesting piece is going to be the queue processor here, because this is how we're essentially going to integrate the video pipeline back into Reddit's architecture and do so with minimal infrastructure that we had to build out ourselves. So here's what the end-to-end video architecture looks like. Inside, you can see the Reddit infrastructure that we talked about, and that queue processor that I was talking about was that elastic transcoder completion queue. But real quickly, just going through the flow in total so you guys have a little bit of context, and then we'll deep dive into each individual piece. But we get assigned URL, we upload that to S3, we queue the video to then get moved from the temporary to the permanent bucket. We'll talk about why we have those 2 separate ones. This triggers an object creation event, and that's how we fire off into Lambda, and then Lambda starts this whole flow through the transcoding pipeline, at which point we take the transcoded output, and Elastic Transcoder will tell SNS to queue a record in SQS that then we read back into Reddit's infrastructure to update the post and notify the user that their post is now live. So looking into the actual transcoding pipeline itself and zooming into it, this is what that looks like. So we leveraged a lot of managed services from Amazon, and again, this tied back into our requirement for having a small development team and needing to rapidly prototype. And in fact, we were able to do this with that kind of skeleton team in about 3 to 4 months. So let's talk about the video capture and validation. This is a relatively straightforward section, but we leveraged a lot of Amazon's APIs to do the upload to S3. We made sure we had transfer acceleration. We leveraged multi-part uploads here to make sure that we could get restarting on uploads, especially because we rolled out to native clients first. Last thing I wanted was somebody to be halfway through uploading a video, it break, and have to restart that again. And we also had this temporary bucket that we're uploading to, and that had a 1-day TTL, and we'll talk about in detail a little bit on why we chose to do that. So once we have the actual video, we need to validate that video and go through that, and this is essentially when you submit or upload that video, you'll submit the post itself to Reddit, and that's when the whole process begins. We get a WebSocket in response, and we create this draft post. It's not live yet, but a user can go view their own post and their own content that they had posted to just make sure that, hey, it did get submitted. Once we queue the post to get moved over, to move the uploaded video from the temporary to the permanent bucket, we then kick off a validation. So we look at the video size, we look at the video length, look at MIME types, do any security checks that we might be interested in, and this is also an area where if you're building your own solution, you can have a quick touch point to just do some quick validation and give the user that information back as quick as possible via the WebSocket that we delivered. And lastly, When we talked about GIFifying video, we leverage S3's object metadata to basically say that this user wanted to GIFify this particular video. And the interesting thing is, and we'll kind of highlight that throughout the talk, is that this moved through the transcoding pipeline, and each piece within those managed services that we have are able to leverage and read off this user metadata, which is really, really exciting because you can kind of do some interesting experiments, et cetera, and kind of the sky's the limit in terms of the data that you can pass through this pipeline. So why the temporary bucket? So let's say that somebody uploaded a video and they never submitted the post. We didn't want to do too much in order to try and clean that up, but with a one-day TTL, if that post never made it through, that video is just going to go away and we've cleaned up after ourselves. Also, we chose a one-day TTL because if we have an issue with Reddit or something's up, we have time to go and deal with that and reprocess these videos and make sure that they go live. So this is not making the user have to re-upload this content. And now the permanent bucket is where we move that uploaded video to, and we store it there, and we lock those permissions down. We want to make sure that we don't leak any metadata or geotagging information, et cetera. But when we first launched the video pipeline, we wanted to make sure that we kept a copy of this just in case that we got our transcoding settings wrong or something like that, where we could go and reprocess these posts and make sure that we had a safety blanket, if you will. And lastly, the transcoding bucket. This is where the videos get served from, and this is what we hook into our CDN. The most important thing to note about the transcoding bucket, and this bit us a little bit, is just making sure to get your caching right. S3 egress is something that is a little bit expensive, but leveraging the correct cache headers and whatnot, we were able to eliminate that overhead that we had in terms of cost, and we got a huge cost savings out of that. So now that we have a validated video, and we're happy with that, how do we go and what do we do after that? So this is where the transcoding pipeline starts. So once it's moved to the permanent bucket, we have this object creation event that gets fired off to AWS Lambda. And the nice thing about Lambda here is we use it to get process isolation on the media info binary. And what media info does is it essentially extracts all the metadata that we need from the video in order to go and set the correct presets and outputs, et cetera. And one of the nice things about Lambda is that we didn't have to have our own infrastructure, and it was literally as simple as just calling subprocess out in Python and calling this media info binary, and we were able to extract all that metadata very, very easily with minimal infrastructure overhead. Also, what we wanted to do is, like I touched on earlier, setting those expected outputs. So based on the width and the height of the video, we wanted to know this is the format or the bit rate that we want to transcode the video into. And lastly, this was our opportunity to go ahead and load balance across multiple Elastic Transcoder pipelines. So we'll talk about that in a second as well, and why that's important. So real quick, talking about the presets that we have, here's just a really simple example with HLS presets, and we check this into our Lambda repo. And all this is doing is it's creating, it's mapping preset IDs to a simple heuristic that we have, and we just look at the height of the video to determine do we do 1080p, 720p, 480p, or 240p, and then what are the audio bit rates that we want for each of the transcoded outputs. Nice thing is this is all in source control, and it's something, it's very simple to go ahead and switch these preset IDs out, as well as add a whole new set or leverage the metadata to do some experimentation around this. Now looking into the Lambda handler that we have here, we talked about load balancing across multiple pipelines. So we have these multiple pipeline IDs here, and all we're doing is just a random choice. And the idea is we don't want to back up videos as they're going through this pipeline, especially at Reddit scale. And so there's some interesting things that happen in here as well, and I won't get too deep into this, but we select the video outputs, we select the audio outputs for this, and we create the Elastic Transcoder job, essentially. And here's another opportunity that as you select these presets and as you look at the data that was extracted by media info, you can do some logging and some other event pipeline integration if you so wish, and do some product instrumentation around this as well. So real quick, again, tying back into the infrastructure piece and having minimal infrastructure, it's literally this simple to deploy our Lambda method. It's just a zip tool. We grab all the files we have in the repo, upload that, and this is something that we've integrated as a build step when merging into master. And again, this is little overhead to our infrastructure team, and it's something that we could keep in-house, and it took essentially a day to set up. So let's look at Elastic Transcoder. So this is what actually produces our transcoded output. So again, we strip the video location data here, and the multiple pipelines that we have around video and a GIF pipeline. And lastly, after the instrumentation that we've done around this, we've noticed that our P90 transcode time is well under 30 seconds. And another really interesting thing to call out here is as we did our native integration with iOS and Android, because we were moving towards an MVP, we didn't want to build out the UI to select video poster images and whatnot. So we're able to leverage Amazon Elastic Transcoder to go ahead and take the middle 50% and just get to market quickly and see how users begin to interact with that. So as I have talked about a couple times, these are the two pipelines, or two types of pipelines that we have. We keep two for video, and this is because usually the video that's submitted is going to be longer in length, and we don't want that to back up, and we actually have instrumentation that we can look at, like how long do they sit in the queue before they actually get transcoded. And more importantly, Reddit places an importance on the memes, so we had to have a dedicated GIF pipeline. And the reason behind this is that most of these GIFs are 15 to 20 seconds average length, and so they're a really quick turnaround within Elastic Transcoder, and we didn't want those to get backed up behind larger content or longer content. So this was a nice little trick that we were able to use that's worked really well for us and has scaled up to that 10,000 video uploads a day very easily. So once Elastic Transcoder is done with its work, we go, and this is the message that gets produced onto SQS via SNS. And we'll look at that architecture in just a second. But some of the interesting stuff that we can look out here is the job status, whether it was success or failure, so we can notify the user very quickly, and the input settings that went into that. As well as the output of the transcoded data, so we can tie that back into the post. But essentially, you get everything that you need that went into this job so that you can grab this at the very end and make sure that things look good, tie the transcoded output back to the post, and understand what were the job settings that went into Elastic Transcoder. So like I said, Elastic Transcoder leverages SNS to go and publish this message onto a queue via SQS. And this is where we have the only infrastructure that we had to go and roll ourselves within Reddit's infrastructure, if you remember from the original slide, was basically a queue consumer to go and latch onto SQS to get this output back. And lastly, at the Elastic Transcoder completion queue stage, this is when we made the post live. Once we tied that transcoded output back to the video, we could say, get it indexed, get it out there, and everybody can begin to see that. And again, I think we were able to do this with 3 queue consumers, and we were able to get the scale that we wanted to. So lastly here, I just wanted to show another slide of just the overall architecture and how kind of everything looks, again, zoomed out after we dived into a couple of the pieces and some of the work that we did around that. Again, you can kind of see the upload flow, again, the transcoding pipeline, and the integration back to the user. So real quickly, we'll talk about some of the monitoring that we did. So the stuff that we got out of the box through CloudWatch for Elastic Transcoder, SNS, and SQS, that was great. Again, going towards our MVP, this allowed us to get to market much quicker and allow us to get some observability and visibility into the process of the things happening within this video pipeline. We had been using Grafana. We're switching over to Wavefront in the whole new Kubernetes world. But for this talk, we integrated with Grafana rather easily with CloudWatch. We got real-time monitoring and alerting. And I think the interesting thing for us is that there were some custom metrics that we wanted and that we didn't necessarily get out of the box, so how do we do that? So Elastic Transcoder gives us these settings that we can go and latch into so that we can get that observability that we want to. We have jobs completed and jobs errored, which are the 2 interesting states for us, and those are things that we can alert on to make sure that we get ahead of any problems that the pipeline is actually facing. And the other really interesting thing that we have here is the standby time. The standby time, as we talked about, was how long are these videos waiting before they actually get kicked off into transcoding. And this is the metric that we're looking at when we did the multiple pipelines to make sure that we are optimizing for that. We want to make sure that we get it in the queue as quick as possible, or get it transcoding, excuse me. So talking about that custom instrumentation, one of the things that was missing there that we really wanted to instrument was how long does the transcoding take? What is the transcode duration? And so if we look at the custom metrics here, you'll notice that we have this master duration here, duration milliseconds. That's actually the duration of the content itself, of the video itself, so that's not what we wanted. So we just were able to do, and in this example, here's an example of us just taking the finish time, subtracting the submit time, to get the total transcode duration time that we wanted so that we can continue to graph this, look at the output, and make sure that we're not seeing kind of any irregularities, any variability, et cetera. And again, this was able to seamlessly integrate with our Graphite and Grafana infrastructure. Cool. Alrighty, I'm going to give it back to Anand to talk about some of the results that we had. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jaspreet. Okay, so quickly going through the results from video. How did we roll it out? So we we initially got some early adopters from gaming communities, and they had like early adoption. They started trying out different videos. Again, it was a similar story from Reddit. I just want to call out some of the feedback that we got when we started the rollout. Pretty inspirational, I must say, from Reddit. I'll try reading. I can't read it, but like you can get the sentiment around what the Reddit users felt about the video pipeline. So turns out like the problem was most of the users who gave the feedback were using a third-party apps, right? Like one of our product managers, Iman, he went and read through all the comments, analyzed it, and understood, okay, when we did this adaptive streaming that Jasheet talked about, our third-party clients did not integrate well with them. So we kind of had to go work with all the third-party app developers to start integrating the latest video. And then slowly things started turning it around, and we started seeing the communities were expressing in new ways, right? Like what we saw was like new creators were coming along, not the same one who are posting in YouTube or the other third-party sites. So there is a gentleman taking a video of his head and asking Reddit to tell him how he should have a haircut. And on the right is this gentleman taking a golf swing and asking people to rate how he did it. And then, so it started off rough, and then with addressing all the user feedback, we hit our monumental milestone like a month back. We got a really good press coverage around hitting our billion views. And this is kind of one of my favorite moments. So Marvel fans, hopefully by now everyone has seen Infinity Wars, so I'm not going to feel bad. I'm going to reveal one of the spoilers from the movie. So in that movie, Avengers, like in the last few minutes, Thanos snaps his finger and half of the human population disappears, like across the universe. So someone went and started a community called Thanos Did Nothing Wrong. And those community members started a new post saying, can Reddit ban randomly half of the subscribers for that community? Thanos did nothing wrong. And it was really good to see Thanos himself using a Reddit video to upload a video and send a message and to snap it. So on July 6th, we did actually randomly, we sent a script to the moderators where it randomly picks the subscriber of the communities, and we banned them. So this is kind of another example where Reddit, at the core, it's all about communities, and you give something simple, the community does something really, really creative with it. Again, so what does the Reddit video numbers look by platforms? So it's primarily mobile. iOS is like 45%, Android at 22%, so close to 60-70% is through native traffic, and desktop gets about like 25%. And so this is like the graph is from July 2017 to July 2018. That's when we launched. And it's been linearly growing, except for the time from like October 2017 to January 2017. This is when we were getting all this inspirational feedback, which allowed us to go back, work with the third-party developers to get it to in a good state. So going back to the original lesson, always listen to your users. And then once we were able to fix most of the issues that they had ran into, we were able to jump back into a linear growth, and we hit to 1 billion views in about like early October, I want to say. So quickly, what are the lessons that we learned? So tech learnings. So like as Jasheet mentioned, getting to 1 billion views and the whole video platform, we have one engineer, like literally one engineer managing this entire Reddit pipeline, and then we have a couple of client engineers just managing the client experiences. But if you look at the service, it's just like one engineer. And then monitoring is really, really key for us. And then using AWS helped us to focus on the core product, the user problems, instead of worrying about the infrastructure. And then, so AWS was perfect for this MVP. And again, caching. Like we messed up caching, and like once we got it right, we were able to cut our cost by like 1/6. So it was really, really important. And again, we experimented with a lot of presets to get the right quality and the right experience for the users. So that is on the technical side. And on the rollout side, we also learned like a lot of lessons which we kind of took from video and applied to redesign. So we identified video-friendly communities, like early adopters, give them the product, let them try it out, and once the seal video that Jasheet showed, once it hit the front page, people started adopting to it. Like communities started reaching out to us and saying, hey, can we be part of this beta? And then slowly, as you start building advocates, larger partners reached out. We enabled it to profiles and through all communities. This was an example of Time Magazine using our Reddit video for one of the solar eclipses. So with that, thank you everyone, and for patiently listening to us on the last talk of the last day of the conference. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So we're going to kick into some questions here. What are the biggest challenges and gaps that you have with your serverless deployment?
You want to take it?
You know, actually, it's been relatively smooth right now. I think the biggest thing for us is that there's a lot of other kind of technical debt that we've been dealing with, and as the company has been growing, we've actually been able to leverage this serverless architecture with minimal overhead, to be totally honest with you. Like I said, it's been relatively straightforward. I can't think of really anything that was too difficult here. I think some of the difficulty that it comes with Reddit is getting the team to be able to maintain this infrastructure, to be able to orchestrate all of the instances, et cetera, and that's something that we just didn't need to worry about. And again, it was so nice to just have a single touch point that this was just really a win-win for us.
Yeah, I love the simplicity that you've put in place and the scale at which you operate at.
Yeah.
That's good. Any questions from the audience? That's how self-explanatory it is.
Cheers.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.